Hi, everyone. Welcome to our conversation today around agentic AI and agent-to-agent communication. My name is David Gildee. I'm a VP of Product here at Druva, specializing in AI and AI development. And I'm delighted to be joined by Raghavendra Arni. Arni, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do at AWS?
Yeah, absolutely happy to be here, David, and really appreciate the long and the continued collaboration between the companies. I lead a team called the Cloud and the AI Innovation Team. It stands for CATE. We are a global team of AI and cloud technologists. Really fortunate to be able to work with customers of all sizes, from startups to the largest enterprises across industries, and trying to understand where they are on the AI journey, what's working, what's not working. And we tend to take all those lessons, those patterns, and share it with customers, share it with our product team. We call them service team in shaping a roadmap. And you're one of them, right? We've done some incredible collaboration, and I had some joint lessons, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of those with the audience today.
Great. Just even noticing your title, cloud and AI is cloud even a thing people talk about anymore, or has AI just consumed the entire conversation?
That's an interesting one, right? So I don't think, obviously, I have a little bias, but I don't think you can get to AI without the cloud.
Mhm.
Because if you think of what AI truly needs, it needs the guts of all your data on various forms and shapes. It needs a whole lot of compute. And we've seen a high correlation between customers who are successful with their AI strategy being really successful only if they have a really successful cloud strategy. Being able to think about moving fast, being agile, being able to access most of these models are available through APIs and cloud anyway. So I see a strong correlation there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know certainly from Druva's perspective, we were obviously a SaaS company from day one. So cloud has enabled that, and since we have that SaaS and cloud foundation,
Yeah,
building AI on top of that is incredibly easy because everything is so accessible. So it's a
yeah,
huge
absolutely.
huge advantage for us.
Yeah.
So kicking off the conversation really around AI and agentic AI is something that is talked about constantly at the moment. Ourselves, we're building our own agentic AI capabilities. Could you maybe give us a sense for what you're seeing with customers, the kind of challenges they're facing with agentic AI, and or what it even means to customers? It probably means a lot of different things to a lot of people. But how would you kind of summarize agentic AI and the kind of work that customers you're seeing are using it for?
Yeah, happy to. Obviously, like all new technologies, the absorption rate of new tech, varies by the industry, varies by the use case within, specific customers. I think startups, number one, we stay very close to the startup community. There's no doubt that, agentic absorption is the highest in startups from a segment standpoint. Outside of that, industries wise, surprisingly for me, healthcare and financial services, even though they're regulated, we've seen a pretty dramatic adoption of that. I think part of the reason for that is the sheer amount of human touch points, manual touch points that could be reduced, simplified, lowered to essentially be able to do more, drive better outcomes, for customers without as many complex resources that need to be put to bear. Now, of course, the more digital you are, the more API ready you are, and obviously, cloud enables both of those. We've seen those enablers, drive a more rapid, agentic AI outcome. The other trend that we've noticed is when it comes to the use of agents. Now, agents itself is a pretty broad term,
Yeah, yeah.
um, right? And agents have been, for anyone that studied computer science or AI, the word agents have been as old as when Marvin Minsky wrote The
Mhm.
Society of Minds, and agents was written since then. Obviously, the resurgence we are seeing right now is agents that are focused on LLMs, right? And looking at automation, from using LLMs as the brain behind them. When I speak with customers, I'd say almost 80% of them, and I always do a poll like, hey, where they are on the agentic journey. Most of them are still using single agent systems, which is an agent that is really good at doing one task, relies on an LLM for its brain, relies on a role and a persona it's been given, accesses a bunch of backend systems, directly accessing APIs through relying on the LLMs to create a JSON for those API calling, relies on retrieving data through agentic RAG techniques, and maybe having a memory as well. So
Mhm.
I'd say most of them are still on a single agent. Now they could deploy hundreds of those agents. We have customers who have asked you as in a couple of hundred agents being deployed at various points in time, some that have spanned up to like tens of thousands of agents, but they still tend to be single agent systems. From a maturity standpoint, I'd say we probably 20% of them have done full-blown multi-agentic systems that truly brings in like, hey, how do we now think about agents talking to agents and not just agents talking to various resources, right? So I'm guessing, Druva's been on the same journey. I'd love to hear how you evolved from like classic automation to single agent automation to like now multi-agent systems.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things you mentioned, even the adoption of AI, as we went around our own organization, and we saw that every team was using AI in some shape or form. So it was just, this is not something that is going to be developed much like cloud. Cloud needed a lot of tech people to make it happen. Whereas
Yeah,
you go to an organization, all of a sudden, in November a few years ago, ChatGPT was out and everyone in the organization was using
yeah,
AI, and now everyone was talking about it. So it wasn't limited to just one group. So
yeah,
that's been a real driver for AI change. And as for the agentic piece, we've followed a similar journey. Starting very much with classic AI, moving to generative AI with a kind of question response approach, and then
yeah,
agentic, but now moving to multi-agentic systems. The big challenge with multi-agentic systems really that we're seeing is just security. It's a huge challenge. How do you even conceptually think about is it impersonation or is it delegation? Do you delegate access to an agent, or do you have an agent impersonate you as a user?
right,
How do they hand authentication to other agents, or ask other agents to perform work? How do you pass context? The right
yeah.
amount of context, and that's something that I think the industry is evolving at the same time, and we're evolving it and learning from the likes of yourselves at AWS and what you're building with Agent Core. Is
Yeah.
that Do you see? Is there a kind of endpoint in sight with that yet, or are we still a year or two out from answering that security question around agentic AI that really will make it so that it becomes very, very accessible to everyone in the enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, like, first of all, I mean, I spent a lot of time thinking about agentic security, and I was with a security company yesterday. The whole notion of a non-human identity has been around for a little bit of time, right? So almost
Hmm.
all of us who've been in IT, have worked with service accounts or workload accounts. These are accounts that wake up in the middle of the night, perform back-end processes. They still need to access systems. So non-human, identities accounts have been around for a little bit. But I think what makes agentic identity a unique thing is a subset of the accounts, and we'll speak a little bit about agent terminology and taxonomy.
Hmm.
A subset of the accounts will be, as you said, masquerading or impersonating a human action, which means that when an agent is performing an action, let's say an agent now spins up. I'm like, hey, I'm David Gilday, and I want to approve a purchase order for $25 million.
Hmm.
Like in that case, you want to be able to clearly delineate that, hey, this is not David Gilday the human,
Hmm.
but this is David Gilday, an agent that is acting on behalf. Because tomorrow, if the audit logs come back and your auditor is like, hey, David, why do you approve this $25 million purchase order? You should be like, well, it was not me clicking the button, it was an agent. But now all of a sudden you'll be like, did the agent do it on its own? Which is more likely because you wanted to do it on its own through reasoning power. But at what point did it come back to you and said, hey, am I authorized to do this? And I think this is where it gets really interesting. And
Yeah.
we're seeing a meaningful uptick in customers who are like, look, I need a dedicated agent identity. I need to store it, but I want to store it with a couple of caveats. If I'm performing a set of actions, there are times when I absolutely need to go to David and seek
Mhm.
permission. And there are times when I do not want to be seeking permission. I just want to, just blaze through. Because last thing you want is, as hundreds of agents are like running up, you don't want to be like getting pop-ups all the time, like, hey, I want to start the, do you have permission? Do I have permission? So how do you make that judgment call of when do you seek permission and when do you not seek permission?
Yeah,
Um,
no, I
yeah,
was going to say, firstly, I'd love to have the power to approve a $25 million purchase order, but that's not in my remit. That's a challenge that we're working on at the moment, as you mentioned, the agentic approach to approval, and we think that what we're looking at is like the idea of a policy. So an agent identity, you might create one that you use for Claude and perhaps one for ChatGPT, one
right.
that you use internally, and the policy might be you've read access to everything that I have read access to as a user, but then I maybe create another one that's going to do things like book travel for me. And you might say, well, I want to give you access to book anything up to $500 per transaction.
Yeah.
Anything above that, I want a CBER request to come to me directly.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels, and maybe this is the fox guarding the hen house, but like that there is a need for AI to judge these actions and decide actually, of
Yeah.
the hundreds of requests you could approve, maybe you've approved this kind of one 50 times before in a row, you don't need to be shown this again. So
Right.
AI judging what your CBER request should be and what they shouldn't be.
Yeah. And I think as leaders, we what we see with customers and guide customers through is, if you work with computers before, we've historically assumed computers are almost always accurate, right? Because they've been programmed, all the way from the early days of computing. Hey, you go to a computer and say, what is 2 plus 2? You always expect 4.
Yeah.
But as we look at this continuum between computing and humans and everything in between, a lot of leaders expect agents to be 100% accurate because they think of the mental model of agents
Yeah.
as digital representations of stuff. But the reality is, if you flip the lens and look at it from the other side, if you're like, hey, no, not really, these agents are not just digital representations of software, but they're actually digital representations of us.
Yeah.
And we make mistakes all the time, right? And how many times have we gone to an org where everyone's perfectly operating, making decisions that are 100% accurate, right? I think if we decide to give agents more and more reasoning, we need to expect them to make more and more mistakes, because we want them to have the judgment along the way. So I think it's going to be a leadership shift in saying, yeah, maybe these agents can go wrong along the way. Now, obviously, as you rightfully said, guiding them through policies, guiding them through some kind of rules, so they can, and those rules hopefully align between humans and agents and build the trust between those two. I think that will become more and more important. And
Mhm.
I think the next couple of years, and I think Karpati had an incredible podcast over the weekend. There's a lot of people who are like, this is the year of the agents. I'm like, yes, but this is truly going to take several years to
Yeah.
evolve as we build more and more trust in these things. Like, yeah, I'm going to pawn off work to an agent. How do I trust it's actually getting done?
Yeah.
And there's a series of protocols that are going to get established around security and managing all of that.
Yeah, I mean that's a great segue into. I know Agent Core went GA last week, so that's a huge announcement. Congratulations!
Yeah,
We've been working with Agent Core since it came out. It's been a huge help to the kind of multi-agentic systems we're building. And one of the items that was added there was A2A support as
yeah.
part of the GA announcement. From a protocol perspective, how do you see A2A and MCP evolving? Are they, neck and neck? Are they getting closer and closer all the time? Will there just be one clear winner because it's too much to manage both, or how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, both of them came from different philosophies.
Hmm.
Um, NCP was hyper focused on the C, which is like, hey, how do I feed the context to the model,
Yeah.
and where do I extract the context from? And I think MCP became popular even before context engineering became a thing, right? And now, of course, context engineering and MCP have a lot of commonality. And I think MCP really excels at connecting agent to a wide range of backend resources, right? Could be APIs, could be data stores, and everything in between. Um, Now, in theory, we can have a resource itself be an agent, so that way it's a more recursive, like hierarchical definition. So I know the MCP community has extended MCP to not just speak with APIs and resources, but treat even maybe with an agent, as a resource. So you could certainly do that. Now, another stream of thought was like, maybe we need a fully dedicated agent-to-agent protocol,
Mhm.
um, which again has a lot of interesting things to it. Just like how an MCP resource wakes up and defines its abilities, and when an agent talks to it, like, hey, what can you do for me? Here are the things. Okay, let me then figure out how to issue commands to you. The A2A protocol focus more on the agent to agent side, where an agent wakes up and it says, hey, here are the 8 things I can do. And as a result, you can have an agent registry of sorts. And I think one pattern we are seeing pop up, very frequently, is when a human issues a task, is a manually or through a part of workflow step, rather than just go directly to an agent, you have a planner that sits down and says, okay, how do I go about executing this task? And
Mhm.
then the planner either hands it off to an orchestrator, or maybe the planner is the orchestrator. So when you're doing this planning and orchestration, you need the orchestrator to be able to figure out what agents are available for me? Like, who do I invoke? Maybe in what order? But again, keep in mind, planning is, you don't just build a plan and keep it static.
Yeah.
As you gather information, so how do you make the plan adaptive and make sure that you still complete this in a sane fashion? So I think this is where I think A2A starts to shine,
Mhm.
because when you think of the planner, orchestrator, executor pattern, the orchestrator understanding what agents are available to me, what actions can they perform, and then feeding that back into the plan in a continuous loop. I think A2A is going to be really good for that, and I think that's how they're going to find their space in the broader multi-agent system, with AWS still being the guts of that, and MCP, working with the resources that feed into the context that these models need.
So do you see the likes of with Agent Core, where you have semantic search on tools, where you're searching multiple tools? Do you see something similar being added for agents as well, so that a planner has
Uh,
access to semantically search hundreds or thousands of agents?
yeah, absolutely. Without giving away too much on our roadmap plans, right, on a broader call here, you all should come to reInvent and listen to everything we'll be announcing. But yeah, you can imagine the same idea, just like how we want to make tool discovery easy. We want to make agent discovery easy as well.
Mhm.
So you can have a good blend of, agentic orchestration and tool orchestration behind the agentic orchestration.
Gotcha. I typically, always focus on the positive side of agentic AI, but there's a risk side as well that needs to be addressed. That idea of discovering agents and having access to hundreds of agents. Could you maybe briefly talk through the kind of risks that you see there, or the kind of things that our listeners should consider when making systems that will work with any agent or any MCP
Yeah.
instance? What would come to mind?
I think, I think one of the things agents are really powerful at is because, unlike a classic chatbot or an assistant, we're asking a question, getting an answer. The power of agents is now they have access to your systems. They can make API calls. Some are read only, some are read and write, even more so. So with great power comes great responsibility. And when you can intersperse your data and code into one, and think of the one human architecture where you can intersperse code and data in one, but now your prompt has your code and execution all baked into one. So it's very, very easy to inject ways by which you can hijack your
Mhm.
LLM and the agent that is relying on the LLM. So first, I think first line of defense is be very thoughtful around how do you make sure that the prompts that are coming in, especially if they're human crank prompts, that you're filtering out those prompts that might be doing prompt injection and hijacking. I've seen agents do some really nasty stuff with
Mhm.
really simple things. So that, I think, is the first line of defense before you do anything else. And I think
Yeah.
customers will need to think deeply about how you do that. And I know the Druva team's been thinking very deeply about that as well. The second thing I'd say is, once you solve the prompt injection, prompt hijacking problem, is when an agent talks to another agent or an agent talks to another system, how do we ensure that we think deeply about agent identity? Like, who are you? Are you Do you have the permission to perform this task? And not to mention the fact that if you have multi-agent systems, your context is now propagating from one to the other. So how do you do, trusted identity propagation from where the request started all
Mhm.
the way to the endpoint? So you're now moving from, the planner to the orchestrator. Now you're going to multiple agents in the middle, and then agents are going to resources. So you're making a bunch of steps along the way, hoops along the way. So how do you make
Yeah.
sure that all of this propagates in a safe and secure fashion? Because, and not to mention that, and this is where I think customers need to be very careful. I walk into customers like, oh yeah, we're just going to use agents from vendor A, vendor B, vendor C. We're all going to orchestrate across them. And I'm like, how do you trust the payload, right? As it
Yeah.
goes from one vendor to the other. So I think these are things that customers need to keep a close eye on, right? Payload protection.
Yeah, I read something last week actually about a new blockchain hack that had been discovered, where contracts had embedded code essentially that was opening up, stealing millions and millions of dollars of cryptocurrency through
Yeah,
contracts embedded in blockchain. So it's quite similar. you open up these systems that are entirely automated, but they have the ability to execute code essentially that you don't necessarily have visibility on. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of challenges like that to consider.
yeah, 100%. I think those are the things absolutely people. And you all are doing some amazing stuff. As again, going back to Agent Core, when our CEO, and actually both of them, Matt and Andy, challenged us, they said, "Hey, let's think about what did we have to do when we built AWS, the cloud. Customers wanted to be able to spin up, basically a physical machine in seconds. Connect all the things that are needed, like storage and network, and how easy can we make all of that?
Yeah.
And manage the life cycle of infrastructure. What would have taken you days and hours, you'd be able to do it in minutes and seconds, but do it in a safe and secure fashion.
Mhm.
So Agent Core for us is an opportunity to rethink how these amazing entities like agents need to work, but in a way that work in a way that works very similar to how we're able to scale up the cloud, but be able to scale up, agents across the board.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you're building in that capability and the security at the infrastructure level, it makes it much more secure because people can't make mistakes by accident, and there's certainly going to be a lot of mistakes, unintended mistakes that people make, but they have really drastic consequences. So
Yeah.
I know we're kind of getting close to the end of the conversation. You mentioned reInvent coming up in a few weeks. Really excited to go there as well. Is there anything that you think people should go see? Any particular talk that are you giving any talks there at reInvent or
I
just to share?
am, yeah. So I'll be doing the agentic guide for leaders. So this is a part of the exec summit. So I'll be spending some time there. There's many members of my team that'll be spending time talking about all aspects of agents, from how do you think about the people side, how do you think about the technology side. Outside of that, for the deep technologists here, I don't know how frequently we do this, but there's a level 500 talk
Oh,
uh,
okay.
that Mark Brooker is doing. So Mark is one of our senior most technologists. He's certainly the
Mhm.
brainchild behind a lot of things around Agent Core. He's going to talk about Agent Core's runtime, which is how do we isolate, secure, and protect essentially the agents when they run inside Agent Core, and ensure that you trust agents as they run. So I would highly recommend for the deep technologists, register for Mark's session as soon as it opens up. I can
Mhm.
guarantee you that's going to get sold out very quickly. And for all the agentic leadership talks, please join us for the exec summit and hear about our guide, agentic guide for leaders.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to it and hopefully catch up with you in person in Vegas as well. So
Absolutely, yeah. Pack comfortable walking shoes as always, and a water bottle, right? You know how it goes there. But yeah,
this
it
will
should
be
be.
my 12th year. So well used to walking miles and miles every November.
That's
All right.
amazing. That's amazing.
Well, Arnie, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great conversation. Really enjoyed hearing about the kind of things you're seeing in agentic AI and learning a lot from you. Hopefully, everybody learned the same as well. And we'll catch up at reInvent in person. And for everyone else who's listening, keep an eye out for our LinkedIn channel where we're going to be talking about more agentic AI over the next number of weeks.
Yeah, appreciate the collaboration, appreciate the partnership, and yeah, I look forward to catching up with you again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.